Welcome to Crash Course in Commercial Real Estate. We converted our in-house training program to a podcast to teach you prospecting, negotiation, business planning, and other fundamental skills to become a successful commercial real estate agent. And now, here's your host, Brady Collier.
Welcome back to our commercial real estate training program. I am here with Shannon again, the person we're training. I'm Brady Collier in Lubbock, Texas, commercial real estate broker. And our subject matter expert today is Dax Reinitz. And today, Shannon, we're going to talk about your life in your new business and the way that you're compensated. I mean, really, it just governs everything about the relationship between us as the brokerage company and you as the agent. And so you went through the whole TREC licensing program. In commercial real estate, we all call each other commercial real estate brokers because that's what we do. We broker property. Technically, I'm the broker, you're the agent. And so I want to talk to you about your previous experience as you're an employee at your previous job, right? Okay, so now as you jump into real estate, you're going to be an independent contractor. And that is a radically different, this is radically different. And so I wanted Dax, who's got a lot of experience on this. Dax, do you want to just give us a 1-minute summary of your background and industries you've been in and your exposure to employee versus independent contractor?
Sure. And let me start by saying you said subject matter expert. I do have maybe 20 years now combined experience contracting as an independent contractor through software industry, oil and gas industry, as well as real estate. But I want to be clear, always consult your tax professional or your attorney on matters like this. I'm not either of those things. And so
I consult when I have questions. I consult Dax and Matt, and then they go consult somebody who knows even more. But he's forgotten more than I'm ever going to know. So that's why I've got him to answer the questions.
So my background, I worked in software for a few years, worked in the oil and gas industry for combined about 9 years full-time, sold houses at Coldwell Banker here in Lubbock for a couple of years, and then I've been with Wheelhouse for about 6.5 years now.
Yeah. And so some of that time was independent contractor. Some of that time, a little bit of that at least, was as an employee. So he has lived on both sides of that. And so I have narrowed it down to 5 things that I want to talk about that I think are fundamental differences. And I'm going to start with the one that everybody out there is thinking of, and that is compensation. And so can you talk about the difference between the typical employee versus an independent contractor and the way that they're compensated?
Of course. And Shannon, I mean, if you've ever worked anywhere as an employee before, one of the first things they have you fill out is a W-4 form where you're going to list your dependents, list your withholding, things like that. And so you're, I'm sure, familiar. But your every paycheck that you get is going to have taxes taken out of that, and more or less, depending on how you do with your withholding, you're probably going to end up at the end of the year with most of your tax obligation already paid for through the withholding, out of your check throughout the year. Right off the top, with a independent contractor relationship, you're going to fill out instead a W-9 form, and then you're going to be issued a 1099 at the end of the year. So there's no withholding throughout the year. You're responsible for your own taxes and all those obligations on your own. And so, I was trained, and right off the top, I would tell you, for most people, consult with your tax professional, but, a good number to kind of start with right off the top is like 25%. Make sure that you withhold that. And I know I have, and Brady, I think you have too, throughout the years, created a separate bank account or done something with that to put that money aside. And so when it comes to compensation, that's the biggest difference that most people have to adjust to right there, is just taxes. And making sure that you're compensating for that, so you don't end up with a huge bill at the end of the year and no plans to take care of it.
That's always a surprise to new agents, and it doesn't normally affect them their first year, because of other videos we've recorded, you've talked about the getting started cost in real estate, where you've got local dues of the realtor association, signage, computer, all of these expenses that you've got on the front side. So almost every agent on their first year, they have a very front-loaded expense. But then if they're great agents, which you're going to be, then by the time they get into that second year, their income is way outpacing their expenses. And you've got to remember, the main thing on this point is you've got to remember you're running your own business. So in the past, you've always been, these people are business owners and I'm an employee. Well, now under this independent contractor structure, you are a business person running your own business under the umbrella of our business. So our company has income and expenses, and likewise, you're going to have income and expenses. And so keeping track of all of those expenses expenses to lower your tax liability is going to be super important for you, whereas it wasn't probably at your previous job. So preparing for taxes is significant. And yeah, I set aside, whenever I was an agent, 25% of every check so that at the end of the year I didn't have a big surprise, so that I was prepared for it. And depending on how much you sell, what tax bracket you're in, that's either going to be a little too much or a little too little, but it's a good place to start, is to escrow that money. That is on tax expectations. But let's talk about the standard way that an employee is compensated. You negotiate a salary, and then you receive that salary paid out every, 2 weeks or monthly or whatever it may be, and you get your consistent check. That's great, but that is not the way it is in real estate. As an independent contractor, you eat what you kill. And so you're paid when you do deals. And if you don't do deals, you don't get paid. I was a broker in the multifamily space. One time I had a big deal I was working on for many months, and it fell apart, and I had been stuff in my pipeline, and I went 10 months without getting a check. And I was the sole provider of our house. And so that's the life of an independent contractor, is sometimes the income, it just comes according to what your business is and when you close deals. So you want to make any comments on that?
Yeah, and I don't want to circumvent your
you're
order
good
on things, but that's a great point there, Brady. Also, is unlike an employee, there's not unemployment benefits if a situation ends or terminates, whether amicably or otherwise, and so that's another significant difference there. Independent contractors are, you're working on a, in this case, commission as needed. As wanted, mutually kind of basis, and whether for you, if you decide that this isn't working out and you need to go another way, or whether your brokers, and Brady will probably speak on that later, there's kind of some requirements I know that we have at NAI as far as production, goals and thresholds and things like that. And if it isn't working out for some reason, there's also not a big employment contract to unwind. It's pretty much just, well, sorry, this didn't work out like we hoped, and we're going to go our separate ways.
Yeah, so that's speaking to the termination or ending of the relationship, which we're going to, if it ever ends, it'll end well. It won't be. But, in your previous job, if somebody would get written up and then they'd have termination for cause, and that's got to have a certain number of offenses to where it's defendable, especially regarding unemployment benefits. None of that in an independent contractor lifestyle. So that's a radical difference when it comes to the end of the relationship. And I said you're going to eat what you kill. And we go to the NAI conferences, and all the NAI principals are there, and we all talk about how we get new agents going. More than half have some type of draw system, and there are actually real estate people out there who sell real estate, and they do so as employees, but they don't get to enjoy any of the upside. So as an independent contractor, you get all of the upside, but you also have the uncertainty aspect of it. To smooth that out and help people get started at NAI, we have a draw program where a draw is, it simulates a salary, but it's not a salary. It's just you get advances on the front side towards future commissions. When those commissions come in, there's a catch up, and every brokerage company does that different on the amount of the draw, how it's handled, how splits are handled based on if you're on a draw or not on a draw. And so that's all over the board. And so I won't go into details on the video, because if anybody else is out there watching, they would face a different situation than our situation. But this commission income versus a salary, fundamental difference between independent contractor and an employee. Tax expectations, radically different. And so some of that's the scary aspect of it. But let's also talk about the perks of being an independent contractor. What's the number one perk of being an independent contractor in your
Freedom.
mind?
That's what everybody says. And of course, that's also coincidentally, one of the things that the IRS is going to look at right off the bat, like when they look at us and they're going to say, do you have real independent contractors that are working for you guys as brokers, or are they actually employees disguised as, independent contractors? And that's one of the first things they're going to look at is, do you mandate and control what they're doing with their schedules, what they're doing with their time? And if the answer is yes to that, then number one, thing they're going to look at and say, no, they're an employee, they're not an independent contractor. As an independent contractor, you have the freedom, and that has its pros and cons. There's nobody cracking the whip, nobody telling you, hey, it's 8:01, where are you? But at the same time, you can take off early if you want to go do something, or go pick up the kids from school, or take a Friday and go for an early vacation or whatever, but it really rewards those types that are self-motivated and real go-getters that are willing to get in there and get to work and make it happen.
Yeah, that's great. So you have total freedom of your time. And we talk about this in the time management podcast that we recorded, that people think that means, I'm not going to have to work that much. But with really driven people, my experience is that we spend more time telling people work less as opposed to work more, because it's an addictive job. And you have the freedom to to work as much as you want or as little as you want. We have a few minimum expectations for culture purposes of our company, and we're allowed to do so. We have a weekly meeting on Tuesdays, which you've been to now several times. And so if your ox is caught in a ditch and you can't be there, that's okay. We don't say anything. But the expectation is you would be there every week that you're in town. But other than that Tuesday meeting, you really run your own business and you set your own hours and you come and go as you please, and you're never going to have me or any of the other management kind of looking over your shoulder. Now we'll meet with you at the year end and say, are you accomplishing your goals financially, work-life balance, so on and so forth? And if you're not accomplishing those, we're going to say, well, how are you working and how are you doing on your financial goals? And are those two in alignment? So we'll coach you through that process. But yeah, I would agree with Dax. The number one benefit of being an independent contractor is life freedom, which is really great. I only have one more, but I wanted to stop there and say, on the tax issue, the compensation issue, the freedom of time issue, do you have any thoughts or questions for us at this point?
No, I don't. I will say, going from employee status to independent contractor, it's something you have to adjust to. I'm so used to being confined to when and where I go, but yeah, learning also it's up to me to get it done now, like be motivated. So
do you find that freedom, is it exciting or is it make you nervous do you enjoy the structure that comes with the employee, or do you enjoy the freedom that comes with an independent contractor? Because some people actually really love structure.
I like both.
Okay.
I do love the freedom of it and knowing I can go and talk to people and I don't have to report back every time, it makes you feel like an adult. But knowing too, I've got to account at the end, like everything's the proof is in the pudding. And so I got to keep that in my head. Like, I may not see it now, but there's a time where it's going to need to be shown.
Sure.
So.
And it's all in accordance with your goals, because it's your life, it's your business, and according to your goals. So very good. Dax, I've got one more that I want to talk about. I'll let you comment on any of that before I go.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned taxes, and I wanted to just say one more thing on that, and that is, Shannon, one thing, especially as you're starting, work through with your accountant and think through expenses. That's probably something that you haven't worked a lot with before. And so making sure you're thinking through things like mileage on your car that you're using for business purposes, if you have a computer, if there's expenses like your real estate dues, local, state, national dues, software, DocuSign, or other softwares that you may be using. A lot of those can be business expenses that you can deduct from your income for taxes at the end of the year. So think through that. And then one thing I wanted to clarify, Brady, on something you said. I think there are situations where some employees do have some upside from a commission split still. Sure. They just do not have nearly the same, in most cases or scenarios, the same ceiling or upside as an independent contractor that's purely commission based.
Yeah, that's really valuable. And then whenever he talked about getting together with your either attorney, tax professional, whomever it may be, back whenever I was a broker, the tax law says I could set up an entity. That was my actual company. I could, file all my expenses through that company. I could pay myself a salary out of that up to X dollars. And then I could, there was some benefits tax-wise to the structure through which you run your business as far as how you pay taxes, whether you're giving yourself distributions or whether you're paying yourself a salary and so on and so forth. And so I can't speak to any of that today because tax law is so complex. Even the people passing tax law don't understand tax law. And so as Dax said at the beginning, we're not attorneys. We're certainly not tax professionals, but you do need to set a meeting pretty early on to make sure you're receiving all of your income through this business in the way. You don't want to get there and him be like, oh, I could have saved you an extra $10,000 if you would have been set up like this, which is what most people do. And then year two, they go set it up the right way. So structurally, you're going to want to look into that. Dax just said something as my final point of the 5 that I thought through on independent contractor versus employee. On all of our employees, as soon as they arrive, we give them a laptop. We put monitors up in their desks. They have, no expenses. There's no desk fees, obviously, and so on and so forth. But we have a company vehicle for the employees to use so that we don't have to pay them mileage anytime they use their personal things. And so as an employee, the company provides basically everything you need to do your job. But as an independent contractor, it's different. And so, Dax, do you want to talk about just equipment and ownership of that and usage, the limits on us, I guess, as a company, and then things she should be aware of there?
Yeah, and Brady, you may be more familiar with other NAI offices around the country and the things that they do. But in my experience as an independent contractor, in across multiple industries, you need to be prepared to bring all of your own equipment, and that's my experience when I started in real estate as well. My own vehicle, my own computer, my own printer, things like that. Now, the Coldwell Banker office that I was a part of, they did have desk fees, so I paid monthly for my share of things like internet for the office and the office printer and things like that.
Just because it's more efficient for the company to buy one plan and everybody pay their proportionate share as opposed to, but it still fell within the independent contractor law because they were paying their own way.
That's right. And so I had my own scanner, printer. I paid for my own, DocuSign and different softwares, my own laptops and phone, car, all those things. Obviously paid for myself, and so as an independent contractor, that's a major difference from an employee. Is those things are not going to be provided to you, and similar to a lot of other things, that's another thing that the IRS looks at, and they're going to say, well, are they using a lot of company resources here, or are they truly independent?
And so if you're out there and you're listening to this video, a few final encouragements. And if you have any questions or comments, throw them out here. Otherwise, I'm going to give a final encouragement to people. Everybody underestimates the cost of getting into real estate. Would you agree with that? How long have you been on the job now?
A month and a half.
Has it been 6 weeks?
Yeah, about 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks.
Time flies when you're having fun. And has it been shocking how many times you get hit with new expenses?
Yes.
Several that you said earlier that you hadn't expected were, just run through a few real quick.
Well, joining the realtor associations were $600-700. Had to get a computer. That was $1,200. So it's just, yes.
When I first started, I was driving a vehicle, and I went to the broker when I first got in the real estate business, and I was like, hey, that's my car out there. Can I use that to drive clients around? And he's like, yeah, it'll get you through your first year. And it was a really nice way of saying, depends on what clients you want to deal with, because it was a car that, and so upgrading car, biggest expense for sure. But so I would say to those that are out there, a lot of people get their real estate license and they're very excited about it, but they're unprepared for planning, doing a business plan. We have a whole nother episode on business planning. They're unprepared for the expenses that come on the front side, and they're unprepared for the tax consequences of running their own business. And so, but they love the freedom. Everybody loves the freedom, as Dax says. So that's an overview of independent contractor and employee. If you have other specific questions, you can ask us. And most of the time, we're going to end every conversation with, go ask your accountant. But here's what I think is right on that. And so, yeah, I appreciate it.
One more comment I'd like to make, and Brady, you mentioned insurance, and that actually just jogged my memory. Make sure, Shannon, that you talk to your insurance carrier. If you are using your vehicle as a company vehicle, there's usually some additional insurance, and it's not a huge increase in my experience, but they will charge an additional insurance. And if you were to have an accident with a client in the car, there are some things that may not be covered there if you don't have the appropriate insurance. So making that transition, make sure you check with your insurance agent also.
Great reminder. Yeah. I'd forgotten about that one. All right. That is independent contractor versus employee. Thanks for joining us.